Welcome
Okay.
to the
All
Brother
right.
Henry and You Show. I am your host, Henry Harris. Such an honor to be here with you tonight and tell your friends and your family that the one and only, the honorable, my beautiful friend Eddie Sellers is on with us tonight. I really appreciate him and his girlfriend Ava for who they are and what they are and the value that they add and continue to add in my life. I invited Eddie on tonight to just kind of talk to us. I initially reached out to him not too long ago. He did a TikTok. He was talking about. I don't know if you remember this, Eddie, but he was talking about Ellen DeGeneres.
Yes,
And
I do
you said
remember.
Ellen was at a, maybe you can elaborate about that here in a second. She was at a place where in the past where she just wanted this validation and
Yes.
wanted to be accepted, wanted everybody to accept. And now she's at a place where she's like, if you like me, good. If you don't, good.
On her,
I'm good with me.
yeah, Henry. On it, what I got that from was she had her last, which she said would be her last uh, comedy special that's on Netflix right now. She tells about Ellen DeGeneres was drugged through the fire. Come to find out, this beloved personality, when people started turning on her, they made her out to be the most horrid person that's ever been born to woman. And she stepped away from her show, and she was but anyhow, in this comedy special, she said her whole life she always wanted to be loved by people. And in the process of her going through that, she said, I give up on that. I just realized it's no longer important for me to be loved by people, and people in the general sense. She wasn't speaking about her family or her wife. And I think we all can relate to that, because most of us that have been through that, where we've been hurt really bad by other people. We've had things said about us that wasn't true. And I was sharing with you a few minutes ago that I don't know. I've never been one of these people who said it don't matter what people say about me or what people think about me.
Mhm.
I'll fooey on them and all like that. I do care about what people think about me. I do care about what people say about me. And I came to this truth that I've always known, that the only people that have the power to hurt you are people that you care about. Your
Mhm.
children could hurt you really bad. Your ex-boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife, the people you care about can hurt you. All the other stuff, it's not that you don't care what people are saying about you. It's just that it doesn't have the power, you know. And so what I've tried to do is I've narrowed that down to where that uh, if I'm not hurt by anybody, because first off, the people that love you and that you care about, they purposely would never hurt you, or you don't want them in your
Mhm.
life anyway. So I don't know if we ever get there where we can just say, oh, nobody can hurt me. And but I think like Ellen DeGeneres, and I think I've reached this place where you reach a place where it's not important to you to be the star of the party or the head of the pulpit committee or the preacher in charge. You just kind of, hopefully we reach a place where we're at such peace internally with who we are. And I think who we are is an it's a journey through life continually, because the almost 70-year-old Eddie Sellers here is I'm not that person I was even 10 years ago at 60. I'm certainly not that person I was preaching for 17 years in an apostolic church when I was in my 30s. So we all evolve. I've just reached, and my thing is I've lived the last 15 years, Ava, who you call my girlfriend, I've lived the last 15 years with a trans black female, and we're very much in love today, just as much as we was 15 years ago. Well, just within that context alone, we go on social media, and you have all these people. Like, I'll be sitting there with my wife of 15 years, and people will come on social media and say she looks like Big Mike. Well, you just kind of have to, like, who is that? Who cares what somebody says? uh, but her mother, her father, her brother could deeply hurt her. But somebody out there in Kansas sitting behind a little keyboard, probably a evangelical Baptist deacon that's dealing with his
Mhm.
own homophobic desires, and he's sitting out there. Oh, look at you sitting there with Big Mike. I mean, yeah, who cares? you know. But this is the world we're living in. If you're thin-skinned, and you probably know this from being on social media and being on this,
Mhm.
you're thin-skinned, get off the computer because you won't last long. You'll go around biting your fingernails like, oh, are they talking about me? I had, and I'll just say this right here. I had hundreds of people sending me links of other programs where they were talking about me. I never opened up one of them. Why? Why would I? My ego doesn't need that, And then more than likely, it was something somebody was making fun of me about. So I'm like, who cares? I'm gonna go eat me a bowl of pinto beans and cornbread and watch some TV. I don't care what these people are saying out there. Yeah, but to answer your question, it is a process. I don't know if we ever get there. You might interview me 5 years from now, and who knows? I might be in jail where I beat the snot out of somebody because they got online and said something. But in this season right here, I can truthfully say, without being egotistical and heady and high minded, it has zero effect on me. It has
Do
zero.
you, do you think being being accepted and loved and validated, does that come with age?
I think so. Yeah. Um, I've noticed this, and maybe some other people out there might understand what I'm saying. I was an HIV counselor at Aid Atlanta for 2 years on as a volunteer, but um on Tuesday afternoons and Thursdays afternoon. And so I dealt with a lot of gay and lesbian trans people, and in dealing with my two best friends, Sammy and John, who's also gone. I think a lot of the unacceptance that I've witnessed, this is just a personal opinion about gay and lesbian and trans people, is in some way they're not totally accepting themselves. They haven't really made peace themselves with it. Because the more somebody is totally knows who they are and they love who they are, I don't think even Aunt Lulu that don't accept you, or the preacher down here at the Lighthouse for Jesus Baptist Tabernacle or something, if you're cool with you, those other things don't. But if you're still wrestling with who you are still wrestling with the small issues about, yeah, I'm gay, but I'm this or I'm that, and I think those voices really hurt people. And I've said this, not to get off on, always being an evangelical. I know I quit identifying as Christian maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, and I became very comfortable. Like, no, don't put me in that category. I love Jesus. I'll love Jesus until the day I die. If they call me right now, one of my grandkids was in a car wreck or something, the first thing I'd start doing is saying, Hila Mahashadabuhukataya. And I'd
Hey,
be calling
hey,
upon
hey,
the name,
hallelujah.
I'd be calling upon the name of the Lord. Lord, you put your loving hand down on them and touch them right now. But I don't no longer feel that I identify with the Christians that we know nowadays, because the Christians like my granny Bratcher, my granny Sellers, I don't see these Christians around no more, where they
Mhm.
would where they would sincerely and fervently just love the Lord in a pure kind of way, even though they had other issues. But that part of their spiritual journey was so pure that you could feel fevers break when they call on the name of the Lord. You could feel the healing uh, go through their hands. This Christianity today that's filled with so much, and when I say Christianity in the South, that's mainly about 75% of it's evangelicals. When there's so much homophobia, there's so much bigotry, there's so much of racism still involved in it. And it's not much different from what Dr. Martin Luther King said on Sunday mornings. Most segregated place on earth is the church. And
Mm.
uh, I don't, I just can't identify with it no more. We all have our own journey of how to get to a place, but I think it starts within. You know, if if you have it within, if you know who you are, other people can say who they think you are all they want to, but if you know who you are, It's not going to have, it don't have no effect on me now. But you have to realize when when my first relationship I had in the 90s after I left the church, my boyfriend at that time, we lived together, and they had phone recorders back then, and he says, "You have reached Eddie and Tommy, leave a message, we'll get back to you." I took that recording off my phone at our house that we lived together in, because I was worried about what people would say about us. Like, listen to him. He's with that man over there. It seems silly to me now, but it was very serious to me then, what other people, just people in the church, thought about me. Thank God I'm not
Yeah,
doing all
you,
that.
yeah. You were talking about looking within, and I often tell people that a lot of what we are looking for in other people, we don't even give that to ourselves.
No, no.
I want everybody to love me. I want everybody to accept me, affirm me. I want everybody to like me. But
Mm.
initially, when you ask them the question, do you even like who you are?
Yeah,
Do you
that's
accept
the
who
big,
you are?
that's
So
it.
as a result, they go out in public and they try to, in some ways, force people to love them and
Yeah,
accept. But it's a beautiful thing when you can give yourself
yeah.
what you're looking for in other people. So let's just say, hypothetically speaking, that I don't like myself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't affirm myself, and it could be a variety of reasons why I've come to that conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
How do I break out of that, Eddie, or somebody that's watching tonight that just don't like who they are? They don't want to be here. They don't like who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People don't like them, and that don't make it better because they already don't like themselves. So how do they overcome? Uh,
Here's what would be my advice to them. And if a person's there, I'm a strong believer that therapy can help greatly. You can pray till your tongue falls out, and nothing can happen. I'm not saying that prayer is not a powerful part of a spiritual journey. I really believe in therapy. I when I after I came out of my divorce of 20 years, I was 39, and I started going to therapy on Wednesdays. And I just remember this thing. The therapist asked me, because I kept falling into some kind of patterns, and she said, if you was walking down the street and there was a big hole right in the middle of the street, and every time you walked down that street, you fell in that hole. She said, what would you do? How would you handle that? I said, well, I'd be real careful, and I'd make sure I walked around that hole. She said, no, that's not a good answer. Go down a different street. Just
mhm.
avoid that street if every time you go to. So, and just things like that. But I would tell somebody, there is no laying on of hands that's going to heal you of that. Most of that is from childhood. Most of that is we've had experiences somewhere in our elementary school years, our 5 and 6, that follows us through life. And at some point, we have to go back. And here's what I feel like I did. And one of the things, I wrote a book when I was like 50 or whatever, that's on Amazon, called The Cabbage Town Years. And what I did in that book, because from being a writer, writing is very cathartic. And in that book,
Mhm.
the 50-year-old Eddie went back to the 7-year-old Eddie and found
Mm.
him in that place. And somehow the 50-year-old Eddie, who it still just, that's been 20 years ago, still makes the hair on my arms just kind of tingle. The 50-year-old Eddie went back there and found the 7-year-old Eddie and said, I got you. I got you. We're together now. And that's in some essence of what therapy can do. There's been a separation in our soul almost, that has to be reconnected for healing to go forth. And we're living in a time where healing is a great um, going on among a lot of people. A lot of people are questioning their faith, questioning their identity, questioning God, questioning the books of the Bible. I think if if I was just being truthful right now, I think all the years when the big evangelists came through Atlanta in the 70s and they preached, there's a revival coming. There's a revival coming. We kept looking like, where's the lame being healed? Where's the dead being raised? Where's that revival? I think this may be the revival that was prophesied that would come. where people are being enlightened, are coming to deeper truths, are waking up to a new way of spirituality. And but to answer your question shortly, just being a logical minded person, I'd be like, find you a good therapist. Make sure they're not a Christian therapist and don't try to put no voodoo on you, but a real, well educated therapist, a counselor that really will peel your onion until you face what it is that's making you feel the way you're feeling. And and it doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes it can take years, but that would be my answer for anybody to do that. Um,
Yeah. What is some events in your life where you felt like you weren't accepted for who you are? Um, was that problematic for you?
I,
And how did you break away from that to get the healing that you need? Because there were those who may didn't accept who you were.
yeah. Well, I fortunately, because my mother, when I told my mother, when I went through my divorce, I went to my mama, and my mama lived with us. She had an apartment on the side of her house, and she's since passed. And I told her, I said, Mama, I'm going to divorce Kathy. And we'd been together for 20 years, and she loved, I'm still real close to my ex wife, Kathy. And my mama loved my ex wife. She worshiped her daughter in law. They would just go shopping together and cook together. And Mama told me, said, Eddie said, how can you do that? She's mothered you two children. She's always been so good to you, worked every day of her life. And I told my mama, I said, Mama, I think I'm having sexual attractions toward men. And I feel like it's only fair to me to give myself the chance to go explore that. Because in 20 years, I never was unfaithful to my wife. I never cheated while I was a pastor of a church. I never went out and got a little bit on the side. Uh, the So anyway, but my mother loved me so much and made me feel like I walked on water. My mother did, even though she didn't understand the whole homosexuality thing. Even though her sister, my aunt Carol, was a lesbian her whole life and was with a woman for 40 years before the two of them died. And I think when a parent, that's why a mother or a dad is so powerful, because when they accept a child, a trans child, a gay child, they inoculate them from whoever else might try to come against them, because they have poured into them their acceptance, allows them to be acceptance. The battle's over. Any preacher can get up and foaming at the mouth and screaming with the microphones up, "You going to hell, you sinful devil," and all like that. Has no effect on them. They're like, "Oh my God, my mama loved me. That's all that matters. Who cares if Jesus puts me in hell, because my mama's on my side?" So there's a powerful inoculation with that. And there's one other thing that when you said what happened to me, I tell you one truth I learned in life, and not this specifically might be for somebody that's listening. The worst you'll ever feel in your entire life. It don't matter if you've had children that passed, if you've had people that fire you on the job, whatever's happened. The worst you'll ever feel in your life is to be disrespected to your face and be silent. You'll
Hmm.
never feel worse than that in your life. You'll go home, you'll run that through your mind. Oh, if I had that to do over again, I would have told him, I would have beat the snot out of him. I would have said this, but you can't never go back and claim it once it's past you.
Hmm.
So I've always been conscious of this. And I would tell anybody that's listening, if somebody ever disrespects you, do not let that moment slip without you voice coming out speaking up. If you have to say, you just wait a minute or wait a D minute, as my granny would say, you capture that moment, because I'm telling you, that's a horrible feeling. And I think I've had that happen a couple of times, but it was when I was young, and people would made a comment to my face, because I was raised in Cabbagetown. It was a real slum, a poor white trash village, they called it. And people would make comments about, "Oh, you ain't nothing but white trash in Cabbagetown." I mean, people was hurtful. And I got news for you viewers right here. I've lived in Atlanta my whole life in the South. You'll never find no meaner people than Southern Christian people. They can be some of the meanest people in the world, and they still out there. I was just at Piedmont here in July, and man, I got so upset. They was out there with things, homosexuals going to hell, and they were screaming and hollering at people walking by. I'm like, my God. And I know that's not typical of all Christian people, but I was raised up around in the Pentecostal church. Man, these were some mean people. And they thought they were speaking for God. They'd be like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't believe in homosexuality. I'm not saying nothing against homosexuality, but God's word said something about it." No, that ain't what you're being mean spirited, and you just hiding behind God. What you think is God's
That's
word?
exactly what it is. Tell it.
Yeah. So
that's exactly
yeah,
what it is.
I would just tell people when I have a few minutes, tell people, if you ever feel disrespected, I don't care who it is, just make sure don't you put up with that. You speak up right then, or you'll feel horrible that you let that go. Because people will disrespect you, especially if they sense a weakness in you that they can do that, and you won't speak up for yourself. Once they find that you speak up for yourself and pull their butt across the carpet, they'll never disrespect you again because they get embarrassed when they come back at you. But,
mm-hmm.
but
So
yeah,
my last question, and I'm enjoying this conversation. How important is it to go into spaces where you are validated? You talked about a little bit about church earlier. There are a lot of people, even in the LGBT community, that still find themselves in places where you're going to hell. Some of the illustrations you just gave. And what
yeah,
keeps pulling them back into unsafe territory that really don't affirm? I mean, on the sign of the church, it says, "We love you, we accept everyone," but they really don't. So
yeah.
why is it important uh, for you to be into to bring yourself to spaces and places where you are validated and loved for who you are and not for what they think you should be?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think I can answer the first part. Why do people keep going back?
Yeah.
If anybody's ever been in a bad relationship, which I was in one or two before I got to Ava in the process of dating people, um, you start to, in an abusive relationship, the abuser will oftentimes go back for more. There's something about it that makes them, keep coming back until they're free. Um, um, I think though, if you look at statistics now, churches are in great decline. Most of the churches around Atlanta, big old like Woodland Hills Baptist Church, the educational buildings, and you drive around First Baptist down, they're all condos now. These big churches at one time had hundreds of people, but people, it's a familiarity. Even the songs that I no longer really connect with, like I know a lot of people, it's like the Christian anthem, "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me." I can't really sing those words now because I'm like, wretch, who the hell's calling me a wretch? You're the one that
Yeah.
drug those Africans on a slave boat over to America, and
Hmm.
you wrote that song. You was the wretch. Don't put me in
Hmm.
the boat with you. I would never have done nothing like that. So even in song, I can't really. I don't get the whole thing. I think I started in my 40s. Right after I left the church, I started questioning everything about it. Because this whole thing about we're wretched, we're unholy, we're unclean. And I thought I would never take my daughter Jill to Target or Kmart or somebody and say, "I'm going to buy you this sweater, but I want you to know you're not worthy of it and you're not deserving of it." I'm like, that would be child abuse. It's really nice to meet you. I've watched some of your interviews, um, and I've seen you've been very prominent, interviewed some quite famous Christian leaders and other leaders. I've enjoyed them, and it's been my pleasure to be on with you this afternoon.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you as well.
Mhm.
And Eddie, how can people connect with you?
Well, I'm on Facebook. You know, I'm a social media. I'm on Facebook under Eddie Williams Sellers. I'm on TikTok under Eddie Williams Sellers. I'm on Instagram under Eddie Sellers. I'm under YouTube, Eddie Williams Sellers. So it's Eddie Williams Sellers. If you Google it,
Well, thank you so much, Eddie, for
yeah.
being on the show.
Good luck
And
to you,
until
buddy.
next,
When you do come to Atlanta, maybe we can go to church at Dee's or somewhere and something.
well, as long as we
Be
have some
nice to meet
fried
you.
chicken,
Yeah, yeah, I'm good with fried
as long as we
chicken.
got some fried chicken.
Yeah.